Hello everyone, it's Vicky, alcohol ink artist from Surprise, Arizona, back with another process video to show you. So I started with a piece of Durabrite paper with some alcohol inks and put them on the paper and using my blower tool. I'm moving those inks around. I also used a little stamper tool and now a heat tool to get those inks to dry. Now, usually when I do these paintings, I figure out what I'm going to do and I make an outline of the subject I'm going to put into the painting onto the background, and I use like a blender marker to kind of trace that on there, and that is just white. It just takes away a little bit of the ink that's on there, and that's kind of how I get the impression. But this one, because it's a crow and this branch and it's mostly black, I decided to use a black alcohol ink marker to put that outline onto my paper. And so that's why you can see that it's very dark on there. So now what I'm doing is I took my paintbrush with isopropyl alcohol on it and I'm kind of blurring out those lines. I'm kind of doing the same process that I usually do with my paintings. I'm just doing it with the black this time instead of taking away the ink like I usually do. So I'm blocking out the shapes just like I had done, but I'm doing it with the black ink instead of with the white of the paper. I also added a little bit more black in there before I started doing this, but a lot of the time I spent on this painting was just spent kind of moving that black around because, like I said, this painting, the animal is mostly black. Now I did add some other colors in there, which you will see, but the crow is black, the tree is black. And the reason why I chose a crow is because this background, it was just screaming Halloween to me with that purple and that orange. And I love Halloween. And so I considered a lot of different animals in there, but I settled on the crow because I think crows are cool. Now the picture of a crow that I had found in this was actually looking up, and I wanted this crow to be looking down. So I changed that a little bit and then found this spooky tree that I like to put him on and kind of made the tree a little bit longer than the reference that I had. And so that's what you do as an artist. You kind of, move things around and change things so that they become what you want them to become. So you can see on the right there, I have a paper towel. And what I'm doing is every time I dip my paintbrush into the isopropyl alcohol, I am then drying it on the paper towel. Now it's not getting all the way dry, but it's getting a lot of that alcohol off of the paintbrush because you don't need a lot of alcohol to move the inks around. And if you get too much, you're going to have a mess, and you don't want a mess. So now I'm using a Q-tip to take off some of that ink that I had put on there. So I use Q-tips as well with the isopropyl alcohol. But every time, even with the Q-tip, I dab it onto the paper towel before I put it to the paper because I just don't want a whole lot of alcohol on the paper because you can just get a big mess really fast and really easily. And I don't want that. Now, as I start on this bird, I am being very intentional with how I blur this black ink that I had put on there because I want to still see the bird and make the feathers, but I want there to be more brush strokes rather than marker strokes, if that makes sense. I feel like it's for it to be a little more painterly, and I just like that look better than just having just markers on there. Even though marker renderings are make great pictures as well. So if you're a marker artist, then you keep going and doing that. Or maybe try this a little bit with the isopropyl alcohol. You might like that too. I actually love painting, and so to do the marker, I like that too. But my first love is painting, so I feel like this is more like painting for me than marker rendering. I mainly think I just use the markers to add the ink in there. And the marker ink is just easier to control than the ink from the bottles when you're doing alcohol ink. So that's why I use this technique. Now, I am being very intentional with where I'm putting my paintbrush and how I am fuzzing up those lines. I said that before, but it's true. You know, when you're doing a bird, you want it to look like feathers and not necessarily like fur, right? So it's a little bit of a different strokes that you're going to use. And I can't really tell you, it's kind of hard to describe, but I mean, some of it's similar because when you look at this and you see bird, you're going to think feathers, you're not going to think fur. And so your brain kind of does a lot of the work for you, but it is a little bit different when you're doing it. So just be intentional with what you're doing. Okay, so now I am adding in some of that orange into my tree there because at the bottom it was just, you could just see the background, which was that purple color, and I wanted there to be orange all the way up through the branch. So I added some more on the bottom, and then I also added some black. That's what I'm doing right now. Added more black so that it was darker. The black, you might have to keep adding it to get a really dark black because every time you touch your black with your isopropyl alcohol, it thins it out. And so then you end up with more of a gray because it's going to thin out your black. So if you want a really dark black, then you need to keep adding it in or don't touch it as much with your isopropyl alcohol. Now, with the crow itself, even though crow is black, it's still going to have shadows and highlights. So now what I'm doing is going in and adding where I think those shadows would be on that crow so that it looks less cartoony and looks more realistic. So I'm blurring up that black that I just added, and then I'm adding more. And then I do go back in and add, and you'll see it in a minute, where I add some of those background colors into that crow as well, so that the crow looks like it belongs in that background and not just something I stuck on. Even though it's mostly black, it still has the colors of its surroundings in it. So I'm just going through and kind of blurring that up. I'm putting in those shadows, kind of pulling out those highlights a little bit. There's not a ton of highlights in this crow. I mean, you can see that there is, but my reference photo was really dark. So my picture, my rendering of it actually has a lot more lights in it than my reference photo had. But that's the way I wanted it. So that's the way I did it. So now I'm going through and adding a little bit more of those background colors in, kind of blending those in. My lighting is a little bit weird on there, but that's okay. It's kind of a cool effect, right? Okay, so now I am using my paintbrush with the isopropyl alcohol again and my markers, and I am doing the details of the face. So the beak there, and then I'm going to do the eye. Now I'm doing the eye and making sure I get the right highlights in there and those lowlights in that eye. Now I wanted him to be looking down at something, and you'll see in the title that he's just being patient and looking down at something because he wants to hunt. He's hunting things. So now his feet I did last. I don't know why, but that's what I did last, and putting those highlights on his feet and then the shadows underneath. And he's almost done. This one came together really quickly and really easily, which I love. So there you go. There's my Halloween crow. Excited for him. He's called Patient Hunter. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.